Okay, well, hopefully this will be going up. I'm not sure if it will, but let's hope that it does. Uh, I'm going to wait just a few more seconds here to make sure that it is up. We have a kind of a poor connection out here, but I wanted to do it outside for a change. If this doesn't work, I'll shut it down and reload it. Okay, so let's see if we've got anything going on here. Okay, looks like we are. Let me know if this is okay. I'm still on the house Wi-Fi, but I'm outside, so I'm not sure how well it's going to work. There might be a lot of skipping, but there's some other problems with the phone connection today, so here we are. I'll just go ahead and get started. Welcome as you come in, I guess, considering the circumstances that the world is under right now. Today is the 9th of October, 2023, and I've titled this video Forcing Prophecy and Justifying Mass Murder. I put up a video last night basically discussing my concerns about the Israeli intelligence caught off guard supposedly, and I maintained at that time that it was not a mistake, it was not incompetence, that it was deliberate to go exactly where things are going now. I've heard some other intel analysts say that they can't believe that Israel did this on purpose. It would be a grave embarrassment to them. Not really. The American government did that during 9/11, had military and security forces stand down when they were being attacked. Didn't seem to embarrass the American government at all. As a matter of fact, they dealt with it with bravado. So I have no doubt that that's exactly what the Israeli intelligence services and the political machines in Israel did over this. What their motivations are, or they don't care about being embarrassed, they don't care about the safety and security of their people, they want war. And that's where this was. Now, I said last night that it was a tragedy and it's wrong to attack unarmed people minding their own business, innocent men, women, and children, and slaughtering them, that is not soldiering, that is not freedom fighting, that is nothing more than mass murder. It's cowardly and it's mass murder. And I told you that I didn't care whether it was the Hamas that did it, or Israel, or the United States, or Ukraine, or anybody. If they engage in attacking unarmed people, that I will condemn them. So now, second day, here we are. So the answer that Israel gave to address this problem is, rather than setting up and being able to catch these invaders as they came into the country and annihilating military operatives, no, they want to go and destroy all of Gaza, and it looks like that's exactly where they're going with this. So I condemned Hamas for what they did to those innocent people, and now I'm condemning Israel for doing what they're doing. And there will be all kinds of people that will say, Roy, what's wrong with you? You know, don't you understand history? Don't you understand what's happening? Yes, that's exactly why I'm saying what I'm saying. In the description box below is a link to Clayton Morris of Redacted, who reported today, as has Luke Radowski of We Are Change and some others, that Egypt knew about this attack coming from Gaza and warned the Israeli intelligence services about it, and that the Israeli intelligence services ignored it. Exactly what I said. Now, is this just Egypt, trying to paint a picture here? No. The evidence, as I pointed out last night, is all there. Okay? It's all there. So that's the proof in the pudding is in the description box below. And now, what they're going to do is justify murdering thousands, if not in the end of this thing, millions of innocent people, as they planned all along. And this goes back to what I've been saying about what was said in the mid-1800s by secret societies that said that they wanted to destroy Jews, Christians, set them against Muslims, and then bring in the New World Order religion. I've talked about that now for years. And I'm not just talking about the Pike letter. The Pike letter was just external evidence of what they were talking about. I'm not saying the Pike letter was even valid. But what it did do is it revealed what these secret societies that I know about were talking about in the 1850s. And it wasn't talking about the Civil War in the United States. Now, and people ask me, how do you know this stuff? Well, I know I have known people in these secret societies, not because I'm one. They tried to recruit me. That's another story. Now, what's disturbing about all this is I'm hearing a lot of, first of all, let me go back here for a minute. I don't mean this to be a spiritual type of discussion. This is definitely political, okay? This is a 9/11 for Israel, and the government stood down just like the American government, I should say the U.S. government did in 9/11. It's the exact same playbook. The Las Vegas massacre, as I pointed out last night, and 9/11 are nearly copied identically in this situation in Israel. Is it to go after Iran? Yeah, probably. It would be another front, basically, another difficulty for Russia. Okay, certainly. So I understand the strategy behind it, but it's also what I call in this video, especially on the Israeli part and especially on Jewish rabbis, who I'm calling out right now, as much credit and honor as I've given you, and you come out with this filth that you brought out in the last 24 hours, shame on you. That it's justified to kill innocent civilians to protect your own soldiers. What the hell's wrong with you? It's what America did. It's what Britain did. It's what Germany did. It's what America did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All for nothing. Yeah, I know, Jesse, they claim to be Jews, and they prove they're not all the time. I've given a lot of credit. I've talked about these Jewish rabbis that I've given some honor and credit for because of what they talk about, but I've also warned that they came from a Talmudic background because the Torah is secondary to them despite what they say because of the Talmudic commentary that they give these sages of theirs in the medieval times. And I'm not going to get into that, but this is forcing prophecy. That's what it is. Why am I upset with these rabbis and the Christians? I'm not just after them. We've got Christians that are calling for this war to get going, even more so than what was going on in Ukraine. Although, again, that's going to affect the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The whole thing's going to go out of control. And I've said again, I'm going to say it here now, you better keep your kids out of this thing. You better keep your kids out of it. And especially your daughters and your wives and your girlfriends. You saw what Hamas did to those female soldiers in Israel? Well, that's nothing compared to what they'll do to your daughters. Am I hot under the collar today? Yeah, I am. Because I'm tired of this. Justifying mass murder because you're gonna do the same thing that you condemn that's happened to you, but go and do it to somebody else. So I promised that I would condemn it no matter who did it, and here I am, and I'm following through. Part of what's going on here is ancient ideas of entitlement that have come down through the millennia. I've explained in some of my scriptural discussions, and I can't do this too long, my phone will run out of power, so I'm just throwing this out there. I'll probably come back later and get into more detail. I don't even want to talk about the seals, okay? I saw a Patriot nurse start reading from the Bible today and all these scriptures, and I don't want to hear that because they're stretching it, they're forcing prophecy, and they're using it for their own advantage, and I'm sick of it. And these two rabbis, I should mention their names, but I'm not going to. They're Talmudic rabbis, Kabbalistic Talmudic rabbis to be exact. They've gone past the mark. They talk about the scriptures, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second, just one aspect of it. They talk about that, and then they seem to ignore the real meat, the nuts and bolts of the words that they're translating. And I've told you this is a problem. And they're doing it again now. So this one rabbi in particular, one was kind of easygoing, just saying this is a terrible thing, we need to support these people, and I can agree with that. I don't mean with military force. I'm not talking about that. But this should never have happened in the first place. This was planned, and it was allowed to happen. We don't have our military on the border except to process people. Well, hell, they weren't even doing that in Israel. But they could have had tactical units out there knowing these people were coming and responded to them before they got to the innocents. The intelligence services and the Israeli government was complicit in this. I heard Ray McGovern on Judge Napolitano today, who I respect. I respect Ray McGovern. But he came out when the question came up, well, do you think the Israelis stood down on this? Do you think they just, it wasn't incompetence, it was deliberate? Ray McGovern says, no, I don't think so. It would embarrass them. I disagreed with Ray McGovern right off the bat. And now with this information that we have from Egypt, I was right. But as far as Ray McGovern's concerned, I don't know why he said what he said. Probably, these guys from the CIA, they still have these attachments. They've got to honor their brothers in arms. Well, I don't need to do that. I'm going to call them out for what they are. So these rabbis, one was talking, okay, not too bad, but the other was talking about the justification for killing other civilians to protect Israeli soldiers, and that pissed me off. Because he's ignoring, what he's doing is he's going back to the scorched earth policy of Joshua and those people. That's what he's doing. And it's uncalled for. And first of all, God didn't tell him to do that. I've never believed that. And I won't go into the reason why, but I will give one little piece of information here that I've talked about before. In the old times, they believed that their gods were attached to the ground that they lived on. Do you understand what I'm telling you? The gods were part of the ground where they lived. In fact, the gods were in the ground. The constellations in the sky that you think you're talking about in the heavens are actually projections on the ground in ancient times. So they believed that the gods were attached. They may think that there's something ethereal out here, but that was not original, okay? It was more of this idea they're on the ground. And proof of that is in the Canaanite worship of the gods, okay? And it was even true with the God of Israel. He was attached to the ground that they were on. That's why they went to this promised land, because it was his to give. I'm giving you some information here that is way beyond what I've talked about it before, but I've never pointed it out to this degree. Then Yahweh became the greatest of all the gods. I'm not disputing that in the idea that is probably the case, but you got to understand the Jewish mindset had to do with their entitlement to the land of Canaan, which is now what they call Israel. I told you about this situation with Rachel. Remember when Jacob took his family away and Rachel took the two idols of her father with them? She didn't do that. Somebody would say, see, they were idol worshipers. No. Rachel took those because those gods weren't attached to the land. It was proof of title, and Rachel was supporting her husband, Jacob, by having those idols as proof of ownership of the land. So, the Jews became convinced, especially the ones after the Babylonian captivity and on past 70 A.D., who didn't even know if they were Jews. They couldn't really prove it. They say they can, but they can't. They don't even know what their tribes they're from. All that was lost during the Babylonian captivity, and they lie about it today. The only possible ones that might be right are the Cohens, and I'm not even sure about that. Cohen means priest. So, they believed that their God was attached there and that because of their worship of him, he was the greatest of all of them. Okay, every culture has done that. Now, in ancient times, if you went from your land to another land, the people that traveled would respect the gods of that land where they went, and the people in that land would give some pass to the people that were coming and their gods. It was kind of a courtesy thing, all right. But those gods existed in their minds, if not in reality. That's all that's going on here today, except they've moved from the idea of a piece of land in one place to they're going to rule the whole earth, and their God is going to rule the whole earth and the whole cosmos. Why am I bringing this up? Well, because this is part of the reason why we have this strife today, this division. What ground are we really talking about? You need ground to survive. You need it for food. You need it for, minerals and things to make things, products, things like that. I agree. But what are we really talking about? And unfortunately, a lot of Christians are going to think that I've succumbed to their arguments. And that's not really the case. I'm refining it a little bit. When Adam was made of the dust of the ground, he was not made of the dust of the ground in paradise. In other words, it was outside of the Garden of Eden. He was made in this place and moved after he was made and had life to the Garden of Eden. And I've talked about this before. But his name, Adam, is, if you add a hey on the end of that, Adamah, it means ground. Adamah means ground. So that's where his name comes from. So what God are we talking about in that ground? In this ground, what God are we talking about? Not that ground, not that one, this one, which was the whole purpose of the Old Testament when God was trying to get people to remember to put his law in their hearts and in their minds. He didn't care about these oblations and things, these sacrifices. Those were all lessons. But they took those outward ordinances as more important than the change in their heart. God, I sound like a Christian. But there's truth in that. And this ground here is the tabernacle of the Spirit of God that he gave you. So the ground we should be honoring are the people. The people are what matters. And as I explained many, many months ago, when I went through some Hebrew words, one of them was a thing that somebody came up with. I'm not going to mention his name, but it became a big issue, and I addressed it. That the word for image in Genesis 1 is proof that this was idol worship and all that. And I said, no, that's not true. Because and the rabbis are not doing this apparently either, or they wouldn't be spouting this call for murder of innocents to save their soldiers. They wouldn't be doing that. So they're proving they're not godly men despite their outward appearances. And again, I'll say that for the Christian ministers as well. The word was zelem. And I said that it was God's image was to produce righteously and righteous judgment while you're here. That image of righteous judgment, righteous works. That's the ground that's supposed to be fruitful. The Torah Jews, who I follow on X, I've talked about them before, Twitter. I don't know who they are, but I watch what they post, and it's really good stuff. And they are not adamant that there's a land that they're supposed to inherit. They have a whole different idea about the fact that they were scattered, the real Jews, not the ones who claim to be the Jews and aren't, and I'm not going to get into that here. They'll throw my ass off. But that they were scattered to be a blessing to all the nations. That's how they look at it. And it comes very close to the concept of ye, you, your body is the temple of God. In other words, the spirit that God gave you. You're that temple. You are that ground. If you're entitled to anything, that's it. And you're supposed to respect, honor, and assist others who are tabernacles of that spirit as well. Oh, but no. Not if you're attacked because you let your guard down on purpose so that you could start a war and then kill thousands, if not millions, of innocent people that just don't think like you do. I know the history of the Middle East. I have the credentials. I'm not going to brag about it, but I understand it. And what's happened here is a travesty. I pointed out the other night, this rabbi says, there are other nations, other lands that have been conquered by people, and so it belongs to them. But you can't do that to Israel because the land of Israel was given to us by God thousands of years ago. Under whose say-so? Something that you have? It's like me standing here and say, God just told me that I'm your Savior, so you have to believe me. If you don't get that testimony on your own, and I don't mean just a feel-good thing, I mean something concrete, you're under no requirement to believe my experience. And you're under no requirement to believe those words in those books that have been changed and altered for political purposes for 3,000 to 4,000 years. There's good stuff there, but you got to know how to divide. And the rabbis know it, and they don't do it. Because the knowledge is power. And it's the same with the Christian ministers that have gone through any of this study as well. It's why I go to the basics of the words. And even there's a problem. It's not 100%. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but that point of Zelem is a really good point. You are that ground that is sanctified, that is edified by the Spirit of God. Not this. God said that ground was cursed for your sake. And you're made from it. But there's a promise that you'll be brought back. And I'm not going to get into all that right now. I'm just not going to do that. But to call for the murder of innocents is wrong. And that's in the word zelem. There's also the word for kill. And I pointed out in that it's really about killing innocent people. It's about murder. It's about killing somebody that's done you no wrong, that has committed no crime worthy of death, and you kill them. That's what it says in the commandment, thou shalt not kill. It doesn't mean you can't kill anything, especially in self-defense. It means you will not murder an innocent man, person, woman, etc. Child. Well, what is Israel doing today? The very thing they condemned Hamas for. I want to get back on one subject and then I'll let you go. Again, I promised that I would not hold back calling out evil when I see it. I don't care who does it. But I want to point out this forcing prophecy situation. One of the first times it appeared, I don't think it was the first time, but one of the first times, was in the first century. I talk about the first century a lot. I wrote a book about it called The Crimson Thread. Right? I've studied the Dead Sea Scrolls. I don't go along with Dr. James Tabor, who still wants to put those scrolls back totally in the Maccabean period, starting at about 150 BC. I don't believe that. I mean, I'm not saying that they didn't start then, but I'm not putting all of the scrolls in that time period so that traditional Christianity gets embarrassed. Let me rephrase that. I'm not putting it back in the Maccabee time period like they do, because they put it back there to keep traditional Christianity from being embarrassed. As Dr. Robert Eisenman pointed out, and as I've done in my Eisenman series and my scriptural series, there is internal evidence that a lot of the scrolls have to do with the first century, especially the Messianic movement during the time of Jesus and James, whoever Jesus was. But these Messianists, particularly the Jamesian faction, okay, right around 60 BC, or 60 AD, knew about the prophecies in Daniel in particular and in Ezekiel. And they knew about the time frame. So here's an example of forcing prophecy. Why was the second temple destroyed in 70 AD? They planned it that way. The Messianists did. Sort of like what Israeli intelligence is doing now. You know, I don't believe that the current state of Israel has anything to do with the Israel of the Bible as far as God's chosen people. They'd have to be following Torah to a T, and they are not. So all of this reading of Scripture and pretending like Israel is of some importance to God's big plan. I'm talking about the nation of Israel that's over there. No, this is a lie. And I'm saying it publicly. Now, Patriot Nurse has a lot of good things, and I don't mean to come down on her, but this is out of control. God came down on the Jewish people, the Israelite people, time and time again for the same bravado, hypocrisy, etc. I want to get off of the prophecy thing about the first century here in just a minute for messiness. I want to point out something that the Mormons did in Missouri in the 1840s. Late 1830s, 1840s. People were living there already. And the Mormons go in there and they start telling the people that live in Missouri that God has given the Mormons this land and he's going to destroy all of you other people. How would that make you feel? Do you think that's God working there? Well, guess what the Jews did to the Palestinians? The exact same thing. They did to the Palestinians what the Romans did to them in 70 AD. And you're going to tell me that that's justified? Or is it God showing these people that they're no better than the rest of the world despite their claims? So getting back to the first century. So the Messianists knew the timetable. The 7 years, the 3.5 years, the 7 years, all that, they knew that. So in 60 AD, they start doing things to cause the Romans to invade, to spark a war. They forced prophecy, and they came real close to accomplishing the exact timeline. That's what I know about the first century that people won't tell you. And it parallels what the Mormons did in Missouri. It parallels to what I mean, we could talk about manifest destiny and all these other things as well. But what Israel is doing right now is a perfect example of this. And I said I would call it out no matter who does it. Mass murder and of the innocents based on lies, entrapments. Israeli intelligence knew this was happening. Israeli intelligence made Hamas. Did you know that? Mossad helped to form Hamas. That's where Hamas came from. Like we helped to form Al-Qaeda. Same kind of a thing to fight our enemies. And then, of course, we say, we pretend like they turn on us, but what we really do is we say, these guys are now in a position where we can use them to look like we're being attacked so that we can justify doing whatever we're going to do. This is evil, ladies and gentlemen. It's evil to the core. All right. I just had to get that off my chest today. One of the key points here to remember is that in ancient times, gods were attached to the ground, to the land. This is Utah where I am right now. Let's say this god is Oomph. Well, Wyoming would be another place where another god is, maybe Oomph. Whatever. You get my point. That's exactly where this whole thing is today. And then they ignore the fact that you are made out of this ground and it's universal. And that this has the Spirit of God in it. And we're supposed to share that. Be good stewards of it, but not use it as a means to say, my God's stronger than yours and we're going to destroy you. If Jesus said anything, he said that. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength. The real God, not some thing that the priest comes up with to control you. And yes, I include some of the stuff in the Old Testament under that heading. I don't think everything there is directly from God. Certainly not in the Ketuvim, the writings. Certainly not there. I mean, those are lessons to be learned. They're sort of like Shakespeare. Shakespeare did a pretty good job on that too, as I've often said. But I really only trust very few things in the Torah. As I pointed out, it was under the reign of King Josiah that the high priest in the temple comes to Josiah and says, hey, we found this book called the Book of the Law. It's Deuteronomy. The Jews will even admit this because it's in Kings or Chronicles. Anyway, it's in there. They didn't know about the book of Deuteronomy prior to the reign of Josiah? So who manufactured that? This kind of stuff is all through the supposed sacred scriptures. And if you don't have the willingness to plow through this stuff in detail, you'll believe that there's a chosen people in a land in the Middle East that can claim to rule over you for time and eternity because their God said that's the way it's going to be. And they're going to force prophecy to make that happen. Netanyahu said not too long ago, power over cyber is the real power. I can almost hear him in that deep voice of his. Cyber, I forget exactly how he put it, but that was basically it. Cyber space is the real power. And they do. As a matter of fact, we have organizations in our country that depend on Israeli cybersecurity and cyber controls. And unfortunately, Elon Musk is going to use them for his X platform and some of the other things he's doing. Going right down and swallowing down, letting the belly of the beast swallow him. Okay. I think I've gone on long enough. This will probably get me thrown off YouTube. But I just can't believe it. If I don't speak out, it eats me alive. I was supposed to do this morning. And I kept putting it off, and I kept saying, I can't do it now. I can't. David Knight's on. I don't want to take away from his message. I'll do it in a little while. So here we are. Just remember, no matter what anybody tells you, they can say Moses was real. They can say Abraham was real. Moses spoke through the burning, or was spoken to by God through the burning bush and saw him face to face and all these other things. Jesus walked the earth and was God in the flesh. You are under no requirement to believe anybody else's testimony unless you can cross-examine them. And if you cannot cross-examine them, their word is nothing more than a story until you receive a similar experience. So you are to hunger and thirst after righteousness, not drive yourself crazy so that you force a vision on yourself, but that you deal righteously and you do pray and you ask for wisdom, understanding, and guidance. And eventually, that you won't just be learning, but you will become knowledgeable of the truth, and not in some bravado way that these people will say, oh, I know it because I've got the feeling, I've got the feeling, I've got the Holy Spirit, I've got the feeling, I know what's true. No, you have an actual encounter with God Himself, and that gets tricky because yes, there are spirits out there that will pretend to do that, and if you don't know how to test them, yes, it's difficult. You're not required to believe it initially. There's a difference when God comes to you and when a deceiving spirit comes to you. There's a definite difference. But you can only learn it by your experience. I cannot tell you accurately what an orange tastes like. I can taste it, I can feel it, I can get the juice running down the sides of my mouth, the tartness, the sweetness, all that. And I can explain it to you, but that does not make it so you know what it is. You have to taste it yourself. And that's the case with all of this. You are under no obligation to believe anybody else's experience. I don't care what they tell you. And even if you don't believe in Jesus, that doesn't mean you are going to hell. It's what's written in your heart and your mind. If it's Jesus, that's the one, and I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just not putting you under any pressure to go there. If he's the one, you'll come to that understanding, and it'll be testified to you in a way that you cannot, and I don't mean feelings, okay? Don't misunderstand feelings and emotions for revelation. It's not the same thing. I've gone on too long. We are really having a problem. We're going down a road that's really bad right now. We all knew it was coming. And the bad people have the playbook. I've talked about it before. The Bible itself is a playbook for the evil, just as it's supposed to be a guidance for life for the righteous. It's used both ways. It's a mirror image. Do you understand? When you have something, there's two sides to it. There's a good side and there's a bad side. I said before, a screwdriver is made to help you to build things to use on screws, right? But can also be a deadly weapon. Everything has a righteous and an unrighteous use, and that includes what's considered to be the Word of God. And we're seeing people right now misuse the Word of God to bring about the slaughter of innocents so that they can push prophecy. And I reject them all of them. I have respect for their efforts. When I see them go down this road, I'm going to be opposed to them. I think I got everything out that I wanted to get out. I'm going to lose battery power, so I better go. I'll see you as soon as I can out here.